The final testimony in South Africa's most controversial trial within a trial is about to shake the very foundations of the Rainbow Nation's justice system. The Lusikisiki case has exposed cracks in South Africa's legal framework that could redefine how justice is delivered across the continent. This isn't just another court case. What's happening in this small Eastern Cape Town represents a critical test of South Africa's post-apartheid legal system and its ability to deliver justice for ordinary Africans. Today, we are diving deep into a case that has the potential to set precedents not just for South Africa, but for legal systems across the African continent. The Lusikisiki trial within a trial centers on procedural irregularities that occurred during the initial investigation phase. This legal mechanism allows courts to determine whether evidence was obtained lawfully before it can be admitted in the main trial. But what makes this case extraordinary is the systematic nature of the alleged violations and their implications for constitutional rights. Lusikisiki, a town of approximately 50,000 people in the former Transkei region, has become an unlikely battleground for judicial reform. The case emerged from allegations of police misconduct during a high-profile investigation that began in early 2025. What started as routine criminal proceedings has evolved into a constitutional crisis that questions the very integrity of South Africa's criminal justice system. Historically, the Eastern Cape has been a region where constitutional rights have often clashed with traditional law enforcement methods. During apartheid, this area experienced some of the most brutal forms of state oppression. The irony isn't lost on legal observers that 3 decades into democracy, similar questions about due process and human rights are still being litigated in the same region. The trial within a trial mechanism itself is a post-apartheid innovation, designed to ensure that evidence obtained through unconstitutional means cannot be used to secure convictions. This represents a fundamental departure from apartheid-era justice, where convictions were often secured through coerced confessions and illegal searches. The stakes in this particular case are enormous because a precedent set here could affect thousands of pending cases across the country. The current situation reveals deep systemic issues within South Africa's police services. The final testimony, expected to conclude this week, has already revealed shocking details about investigative procedures that appear to violate multiple constitutional provisions. Legal experts are calling this one of the most significant challenges to police accountability since the establishment of the Independent Police Investigative Directorate in 2012. Key evidence presented during the trial within a trial includes allegations of unlawful detention, coerced confessions, and searches conducted without proper warrants. Perhaps most damaging are revelations that senior police officials may have deliberately circumvented constitutional protections to build their case. The prosecution's case has been severely undermined by these revelations. What they initially presented as a straightforward criminal matter has become a complex constitutional law case that questions fundamental police practices. Like this video to help more Africans see how justice systems across our continent are evolving. The defense team, led by prominent human rights lawyers, has argued that the violations were so severe that the entire case should be dismissed. Their final testimony is expected to include expert witnesses on constitutional law and police procedure. This isn't just about one case, it's about establishing clear boundaries for law enforcement in a constitutional democracy. Civil society organizations have been closely monitoring the proceedings. The Legal Resources Center has filed amicus curiae briefs arguing that the case has implications far beyond the specific defendants involved. They contend that allowing illegally obtained evidence would effectively nullify constitutional protections for all South Africans. Key players in this drama include Judge Patricia Mogotsi, who has shown remarkable patience in allowing extensive testimony about police procedures. Her eventual ruling will likely be scrutinized by legal scholars across Africa and could influence judicial thinking continent-wide. The defense team includes Advocate Sarah Komu, a respected constitutional lawyer who has previously argued cases before the Constitutional Court. On the prosecution side, Senior State Advocate Michael van der Merwe has the unenviable task of salvaging a case that appears to be built on constitutionally suspect evidence. His performance in this trial could define his career and influence prosecutorial strategy in similar cases going forward. Subscribe for honest, Pan-African analysis you won't find on CNN or BBC. This case represents something much larger than South African jurisprudence. Across the African continent, nations are grappling with similar questions about balancing law enforcement effectiveness with constitutional rights. From Nigeria's police reforms to Kenya's judicial transformation initiatives, countries are watching how South Africa navigates this constitutional challenge. South Africa's legal system has often served as a model for other African nations transitioning to democracy. The principles established in cases like this one often influence legal thinking from Ghana to Zimbabwe. A strong ruling that upholds constitutional principles would reinforce Africa's commitment to rule of law and human rights. The timing is particularly significant as the African Union continues to promote continental integration and standardized legal frameworks. South Africa's handling of this case could influence ongoing discussions about harmonizing criminal procedure laws across member states. Moreover, this case demonstrates Africa's growing legal sophistication. The level of constitutional analysis being conducted in Lusikisiki rivals that of any Supreme Court on any continent. This is Africa rising not through economic indicators alone, but through the maturation of our legal and judicial institutions. What happens in Lusikisiki will reverberate across the continent for decades to come. If the court rules that constitutional violations invalidate the prosecution's case, it sends a clear message that African justice systems prioritize rights over convenience. If the court allows the case to proceed despite constitutional concerns, it suggests that even mature African democracies struggle with balancing competing interests. For ordinary Africans, this case represents hope that justice systems can evolve and improve. It demonstrates that constitutional protections aren't just theoretical concepts but practical safeguards that courts will enforce when necessary. This is exactly the kind of judicial independence that strengthens democracy across our continent. The international community is also watching. Development partners and international investors view strong judicial systems as indicators of political stability and rule of law. A principled ruling in this case enhances South Africa's reputation as a constitutional democracy and reinforces its leadership position on the continent. As we await the final testimony and eventual ruling, one thing is certain: the Lusikisiki trial within a trial will be studied in law schools across Africa for generations. It represents a watershed moment in the ongoing evolution of African legal systems and demonstrates our continent's commitment to constitutional governance. The precedent established here will influence how police conduct investigations, how prosecutors build cases, and how judges evaluate evidence in constitutional democracies across Africa. More importantly, it reinforces the principle that no one, not police, not prosecutors, not politicians, is above the law. This is Africa asserting its values, Africa strengthening its institutions, and Africa showing the world that we take constitutional democracy seriously. The eyes of the continent are on that courtroom in Lusikisiki, and history is being written. Check out this next video where we explore how African countries are revolutionizing their judicial systems and setting global standards for constitutional governance. The transformation happening across our continent is remarkable, and cases like Lusikisiki prove that Africa's legal institutions are among the most sophisticated in the world. What do you think this ruling will mean for justice across Africa? Comment your thoughts below.